Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Screen Sanctum. I'm Steve. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is out almost a week, and I think the consensus is between everyone that's seen this, it's probably the best Spider-Man movie that's ever come out. And I do share the opinion that to me, it is probably the best Spider-Man movie I've seen. It is not my favorite Spider-Man movie. Totally different, question there. But I do believe it's the best Spider-Man movie. What disappoints me is that as good as this is Across the Spider-Verse, I think all the live action movies are equally just as good, but it's unfair that a lot of people pick them apart for reasons that they let Across the Spider-Verse kind of slide with like plot holes and inconsistencies. And we're all Spider-Man fans here. I don't understand why we have to attack a movie and just to build up another one. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man movies were good, Andrew Garfield's were good, Tom Holland's were good. And the main through line for all of them is they all have inconsistencies, and that's fine. But I also want to use this video to kind of also confirm that I think animation is the best medium to tell a comic book story. It just is. Comic books are cartoons, it's animated. What better way to like tell those stories on television and film is through animation. And that's not saying that live action movies aren't good. They're just different. And there's a lot of things that get overlooked in animation that get picked apart in live action. So this is just going to be my quick list of things that I caught in Across the Spider-Verse that I really don't care about because I tend to not pick apart these movies. They're comic book movies. But some people would definitely say something if it was live action. So I'll go through this really quickly before I do. To all of you who have subbed, thank you very much. Again, I'm almost at 1,000. And if you'd like to see some more exclusive videos or full reactions, check me out at Patreon at Screen Sanctum. So here we go. Within the first 15 minutes, I caught the first thing that people would be complaining about. If you remember in Captain America Civil War, even now, almost 10 years later, people still complain about Spider-Man doesn't have Spidey sense in this movie. Like, it sucks because Spider-Man would catch all these things, even though they do show us that he has Spidey sense in Civil War. But people still complain that it's terrible because for some reason they think he doesn't have Spidey sense. In the first 15 minutes of this movie, two veteran Spidey people conveniently forget that they have Spidey sense while they're fighting the paper vulture. Gwen and Miguel O'Hara, both of them. And you could go back and watch it literally within the first 20 minutes, the first fight, they get the drop on them by paper vulture because they forget they have Spidey sense. But no one says anything. And it's fine with me. I don't care. Because if everything was perfect, these superheroes would never be put into compromising situations. So you kind of have to forget something sometimes. But if that was live action, people would be going crazy because they still are with Civil War. In regards to Spidey sense, the most pivotal part of the movie, the very end, spoiler alert, when Miles Morales is in Earth 42 with that version's uncle, he gets captured. And why does he get captured? Because he forgets that he has Spidey sense. Earth 42 Miles bops him over the head and knocks him out. If you're going to complain about the live action Spider-Man and their Spidey sense, you can't applaud this final act when Miles Morales literally forgets he has Spidey sense. And that's the only reason why he's put in that position. That's my second thing. Oh, and the other thing I had is throughout this movie, Across the Spider-Verse, Miles is really good with his spider sense of like picking up on situations. And this also happened in Spider-Man No Way Home. Tom Holland, when he used his Spidey sense to pick out that the Green Goblin was kind of faking it in that scene. So I feel like with all of the advantages that Miles Morales has with his powers, he still wasn't able to tell that his Uncle Aaron was lying when he mentioned, hey, you cut your braids. Miles would have caught that. He would have picked it up. But again, you could say he was nervous. That's fine. But if it was live action, it would probably get picked apart. Let's see. This is an even bigger one. So at the end of the movie, throughout the entire chase scene, and even before that, when they're in like the Spidey headquarters and they're about to start chasing Miles Morales, and this is fine because Miles is a very talented spider person, but he does outwit 1,000 other spider people who have all been spider people way longer than Miles. but he outsmarts them and he could get away, which again is fine. That just kind of lets us know how talented Miles is. And that's easily written away by he's just better than them all. You know, he's quicker, younger, faster. But that doesn't explain why he couldn't have just turned invisible. It's probably one of his greatest powers. And sometimes we give these superheroes powers that are just like OP. And you could always say, oh, why didn't he use this? He could have defeated this person. And again, you have to write that out, or else you would never get these comic book characters or superheroes in these positions. All he had to do was become invisible or ran a little bit, then became invisible. All the spider people would have been outside and he would have been chilling inside with no one there. But to add on to that, this one here, oh my God, I could not imagine if Peter Parker, Tom Holland, was, say, running away from Doc Ock, and all he did was get behind him and stick on his back, right? Imagine in Spider-Man No Way Home, Peter Parker just sticks on the back of Doc Ock, and not only does Doc Ock not feel the over 100 more pounds on his back, no one knows where he is. And that happened in that scene as well. Miles Morales doesn't turn invisible, but he sticks himself on the back of someone, and that person has no idea that he's there. And admittedly, this is a hilarious scene in the movie. I was cracking up. Like, it's an amazing scene, and it works in animation. But if you did it in live action, you just couldn't. People would not take that seriously, but it was hilarious in Across the Spider-Verse. In my opinion, Spot is a villain you probably couldn't do in live action. It would be really, really hard. It's kind of a ridiculous character in the first place that works brilliantly in animation. I didn't want to go too much into just the character because in reality, if you do a villain well in live action, you can get away with it. Spot to me would just be a little bit difficult, but I wanted to bring up Spot because this is also something that people would probably kind of go a little bit crazy with. In the beginning, Gwen Stacy goes to Miles's universe, and we all think in the beginning she's going to see him, right? To say hi, because she does do that, right? And this is when Spot's not even at his strongest. He's still very, very vulnerable. So the whole part of the movie is contingent on Miguel and the more important spider people sending Gwen here because there's this huge threat, like this multiversal threat that could destroy more than one universe, right? And instead of Gwen Stacy just going there, taking care of Spot, going home, then going to visit Miles, she basically like, fuck Spot, I need to see my friend. So the whole plot of the movie happens because one, Gwen Stacy was irresponsible. And again, if it happened in live action, people would be going crazy. But even before we get to Gwen Stacy, in the very beginning, when Miguel is fighting Spot, again, Spot doesn't even know how to use his powers. All Miles has to do is become invisible, get behind him, web him up, and arrest him, literally. And there comes the going invisible again. Like, it's a power that you really can latch on to and say he should be able to get out of any situation because of that. And it's hard. So I don't know if there's like a cooldown time because they don't really explain it in the movie, but it's a really cool power, but it's something he should be using all the time. Yeah, he should have whooped the Spot's ass in the beginning. But again, you can write this as Miles is just a really funny kid. He's a teenager, and he was like, why should I waste my time with this guy? Which was kind of the plot. He didn't take him seriously, so fine. But again, if that happened in live action, no way people would go for that. There's some things that are like real world physics. I only have two examples because there's thousands in this movie, and it's because it's animation, and they just don't translate. So one, that awesome scene where they're swinging through New York, Gwen and Miles, and Gwen is hanging from her feet. Like, just, that was so cool. And you see Miles come through, hanging on the web from his foot, and they go through the frame. You can't do that in live action. You just can't. Like, it's impossible. But it's dope because they take advantage of the animation in this movie to do it. And it looks so cool, but you cannot do that in live action. Second thing was hanging upside down. Another one of the best scenes in the movie where they're on the building and Gwen is walking across like that gargoyle and she goes under and the screen flips. One of the best shots in all of animation that I've ever seen. It's so cool. But the physics don't work in live action. Like the way she walks and shifts over, it doesn't look like she's putting any muscle effort into it. Like even if you're a superhero, that would be pretty much impossible. So if you did that in live action, I think people would be like, come on, man, this looks stupid. But you could do it in animation and it's fine. The other thing, and this one really made me think, and I kind of cried for Andrew Garfield, in the very beginning when Miles is fighting the Spot, and they're going back and forth, and they're on that work site, and Miles' dad falls all the way down, and Miles saves him. So I was like, if Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man was watching this movie, he would be bawling his eyes out because Miles just flings his web, gets him like on his back, and just basically whips him onto the platform, and he just lands on his feet. And they made me cry for Andrew because is that all he had to do to save Gwen Stacy? Because like she snapped her back. Like literally that should have happened to Miles's dad. But it's animation and it works in the rules of animation and you can't do it in live action. Because if you could, Gwen Stacy wouldn't have died. Andrew could have just webbed her up and webbed her and flung her back up and she would have went up and then he could have webbed back up and caught her. But again, live action is different. I think that's pretty much all I do have. The hanging upside down was basically just when they were upside down under the gargoyle, the blood that would have rushed to their head. Like you don't think about it in animation, but in live action, it's something you would have to think about. So could you do it? Yeah. Would people complain about it? Probably. So those are like 6 or 7 things that I pointed out. And now, if you've gotten this far, I have a question for all of you. We learned in this movie, again, spoiler, that the spider that bit Miles was not from his dimension, not from his universe, right? It was taken from Earth 42, which means in Earth 42, which we get to at the end with his uncle and the other Miles, that was supposed to bite Earth 42's Peter Parker. So my question is, every other spider person, basically they have the same exact powers, right? Except for Miles. If the Earth 42 spider would have bitten Earth 42 Peter Parker, would that Peter Parker have gotten Miles's powers, like the electricity and the turning invisible and stuff like that? Or are those powers because that spider is in the wrong universe and bit a Miles Morales instead of a Peter Parker? So it's different DNA. I kind of think that's more aligned to the answer, is that because it's not Parker DNA, that Miles got better powers. So basically that's all I really have. And again, this isn't me dissing Across the Spider-Verse. This movie was amazing. It's just me kind of calling out the people who have nothing better to do but nitpick every little thing from live action Spider-Man movies. But then they'll say a movie like this, which is the best Spider-Man movie, is a masterpiece. Like it's a visual masterpiece, but there's just as many plot holes and inconsistencies in this movie as there are in live action. And I just hate to see like Spider fans arguing about stuff. Like just enjoy the movies, because the biggest difference is when we watch Across the Spider-Verse and we watch No Way Home, they're both Spider-Man movies, right? No Way Home, we're watching it. It's happening in the real world. Like we could be there because it's live action. So in our minds, we definitely go to a place where things have to make logistical, real world sense. It's just normal, right? Because things would just look weird in live action. But when we watch animation, we kind of tend to overlook a lot of things, like some of the things I mentioned. But when you really do think of it, even though it's animated, it's still taking place in a real world. We're just watching it animated. So certain things should kind of have logic to them. But again, it's based off a comic book and you can do anything you want. This whole video is basically one, telling Spider fans, stop complaining about live action movies. Like, can we just enjoy all of these movies? And 2 is to kind of prove my fact or prove my point that the best comic book movies, or to get the best comic book movie, you have to do animation. Because you could do literally everything you do in a comic book, you can do in animation, and we won't even think twice about it. Because you have so much more leeway You have so much more in terms of art, like Across the Spider-Verse, the animation style. You could basically do whatever you want. Another thing in live action is, and I'm going to kind of end it here, is not only the things get picked apart that aren't logical, also the CGI, right? And the animation that's in live action. It's just people see that stuff and they're like, okay, that doesn't look like it should be there, therefore it sucks. Rather than just watching the movie as a story and saying, yeah, this is cool, it makes sense. So when I see people saying like, oh, Across the Spider-Verse, it's better than No Way Home and all these, and I agree. It probably is. This movie was amazing, and it's only halfway done since we have the second half of the story coming up. But you gotta stop nitpicking live action. That's all I have to say. Because you kind of look like a hypocrite if you're picking apart things in one medium and letting it slide in another. That's basically all I have to say. So I'll end this with just let me know what you think about this video, like my points. If you're watching this and you take away from this that I don't like Across the Spider-Verse, I apologize. That's not what this is about. It's basically, like I said in the beginning, why do people nitpick live action but let certain things pass in animation? Because yes, this was the best Spider-Man movie I've ever seen. So I just want to hear your thoughts on why do you think people do that? Why do you think people watch an animated Spider-Man like Into the Spider-Verse and Across and find them perfect and overlook certain things, and then they'll watch No Way Home and they'll just say it sucks because Peter wouldn't do this or something like that? Yeah, I think that's all. There's nothing else I could think of. I just feel like I said, animation, you literally can do whatever you want. And in these movies, I think you want to be able to stretch the limit and do whatever you want, and you just can't do it in live action. So again, let me know what you thought of my video. If you agree or disagree, let me know below. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace, guys.